Developing this weekend, the New York Times says federal agents showed up at the homes of several of the paper's reporters to serve them subpoenas to testify before a grand jury next week. It comes after the Times reported on security concerns around President Trump's new Air Force One plane donated by the Qatari government. The Times called it an extraordinary escalation in President Trump's efforts to threaten and intimidate independent news organizations. Now, a spokesperson for the Justice Department told the Times the reporters were not the target of the investigation and that it is aimed at figuring out who leaked classified information. Joining us now for analysis, we have Jean Policinski from the Freedom Forum, a nonpartisan nonprofit that advocates for the First Amendment. Jean, thank you very much for being with us this morning. What is your reaction to the federal government serving these subpoenas at the homes of New York Times reporters?
Well, I think we certainly want the government to defend national security, protect national security, but it sort of raises three concerns for mine. The overall role of the press as a watchdog on government. The founders clearly indicated or established the First Amendment to say that we needed an independent voice to tell us what the government isn't telling us or won't tell us. The second thing is I believe current DOJ guidelines call for subpoenaing reporters sort of as a last resort. As an investigation going on, maybe reached a dead end. This seems awfully sudden at the start of an investigation. And I think the third thing that may be provoking the most emotional response is showing up on the reporters' doorsteps rather than, say, contacting the Times attorneys or showing up at the office. You know, critics are already saying this is really less about an investigation and more an attempt to intimidate or harass a press that's maybe saying something that the administration doesn't like.
Yeah, Gene, you know, the Times says that prior to this story being published, a senior official at the FBI had actually asked the paper to disclose its sources and to hold the article. And the Times says the FBI called all of that a security concern. But do you see that as appropriate, as the government stepping in here, asking, number one, whose sources are, and then to hold this article?
Well, again, a Times story that I read said that the government really didn't offer any reasons for this to be a national security concern. And I think that, again, the role of an independent press, as we've seen throughout our history, Watergate and other things, is to listen to what the government says, be responsible, listen to that, and then make your own independent evaluation of whether or not it's a valid enough reason to not meet the goal, which is the basic goal of informing the public about what their government is doing.
And Jean, earlier this year, the FBI raided the home of Washington Post reporter Hannah Nadenson as part of an investigation into a government contractor accused of illegally retaining classified materials. Can you talk about the broader landscape of the state of the First Amendment, what you've been seeing in your research, and how this impacts everyday people at home?
Well, you know, again, this is the public's right to know. It's not the press's right to know. This is about the public's right to know. And unfortunately, through our history, we've seen times when government has seen fit not to tell us things that we really did need to know. So there's always this creative tension, if you want to call it, or a constitutional question, rather, between what is the role of the press and what is the ability of government to control their own information. They certainly have a right to try to control it, but there are times when we need to see or hear what the government is doing, essentially to make our decisions as an informed voter or citizen. So these are really balancing those kinds of rights.
All right, Jean Policinski from the Freedom Forum, thank you so much. We'll be right back.